Thank you so much, Chair and members of the committee. As I mentioned, my name is John Pappas. I'm the Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs for GeoComply. We are a global leader in geolocation, identity verification, and fraud prevention technology. We're licensed by regulators in every state that has approved online gaming, and we provide critical compliance functions so that regulated sports books that are operating online are trusted and secure and safe for consumers. We deliver unparalleled technology that provides oversight not only for the operators, but for the regulators as well. Each day we process in upwards of over 40 million geolocation transactions. And to your point, I think it's really important to note that the data we collect is strictly for compliance purposes. We never sell, share an individual's geolocation data with outside third parties. It is simply used to validate a player's location so they can either place a bet or be blocked from placing a bet. And since our inception, we've successfully tackled the challenge of restricting betting within a state border or other geographic regions, even down to a city block or even a building. Our technology enables online operators and regulators to meet the demands of federal law, such as the Wire Act or the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, and the states that choose to opt in or opt out of online wagering. You may be familiar, as you already are, with geolocation services for such consumer applications like Google Maps or Uber, or placing a coffee order at your closest Dunkin' Donuts. But the main difference between those open door tools and our compliance grade geolocation is how we interrogate the data to ensure that it is trusted and secured. We don't simply rely on IP address. Everybody knows what an IP address, that's 1980s technology. It is the easiest, most spoofable technology out there. So we have to dig deeper. We have to detect and block the use of proxies, VPNs, remote desktops, virtual machines, mock location settings, developer tools. The list goes on and on. We have a full-time team of more than 250 employees across the country that are monitoring and ensuring that our systems are updated. Every time our system approves or denies a geolocation transaction, it has undergone over 350 analytical checks to verify that only legal bets are permitted. Now, if I can do a little bit of show and tell, I'd like to be able to share my screen here. Let's see if I can successfully do this.
Yeah, great.
Here we go. If people are able to see my screen, what I'm showing you right now is live transactions. I'm sorry?
Massachusetts with a lot of dots, a lot of things on it.
Yes, exactly. So this is the state of Massachusetts, which, as you know, recently launched mobile sports betting in March of this year. And what you're seeing here are live geolocation transactions in real time. So these are real-time transactions of us verifying players' locations within the state of Massachusetts at this very moment. The dots that you see, the white dots, are what we would call an iOS device. So that would be your iPhone or iPad, things powered by the Apple operating system. Green dots are Android devices. And the blue dots, which are very few here, would be like a Mac or a PC. So your laptop or your Mac computer. Most sports betting is done via a mobile application, so either an iPhone or an Android, and I would say a much lesser amount. And then the cool red dots are blocks. What we'll probably see, if I zoomed out, you'd probably see more blocks throughout the country. And sometimes you'll see a block within a jurisdiction. And that's based on what I shared before, is that if a player was running a VPN or on their phone, they had what we call a fake GPS app running, we would be able to identify that and notify the player that they need to disable those services in order to legally bet within the jurisdiction because their data could be compromised. So we take very seriously that we are able to accurately pinpoint a player's location so that they can place the bet right up to the border of New Hampshire, I'm sorry, of Massachusetts, but also if they cross over, that they're not able to place that bet. You'll notice that the closer you are to the border, the more often you'll be geolocated, because what we don't want is somebody logging into their app and then setting up their bets and then walking across the street, literally in some states where you can just walk across the street and then place a bet in the jurisdiction that's not permitted. So we have to geolocate people more frequently based on their proximity to the border. And we have rules engines that examine that and ensure that we are not going to allow for wagers to happen outside of the permitted jurisdiction.
So it's been fascinating in this short time to see how many have been caught in Maine and New Hampshire and Connecticut. So it's very interesing to see this. And how restrained Western Massachusetts is. How few bettors are in Western Mass.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we're also, it's a little early in the day. Typically during an NFL Sunday, you'd probably see a lot more activity throughout the state than you would on a Friday, a Good Friday, nonetheless, at 10 a.m. in the morning.
So that's why there's more restraint. Are you ready for questions? You have a little bit more.
I actually, because you asked a question about blocking from other states, I actually do have some data specific to New Hampshire specific to Vermont that I'd love to show the committee if you didn't.
We would love that. But while we're looking at this, I guess one of my questions is, if you are a Vermonter, I mean, so you go by location, not the state that you're registered in as a player. So if you're a Vermonter and you're in North Carolina playing golf, for example, you couldn't place a bet using your Vermont account. You'd have to be you'd have to be using the North Carolina jurisdiction.
Correct. That's exactly correct. Yes. So we would identify that you were in North Carolina, and depending on the mobile operator that you're using, they would have either the same app or a different app that would be for each state, and you'd have to log into the app for the jurisdiction in which you are in.
So the jurisdictional revenue is protected.
Absolutely. It's location based, not registration based. So we don't even know. We have no personal details. We don't know the name of the individual. We have no mailing address, credit card information. That's none of the data that we are collecting. We have no PII other than their location at the time of them engaging in the activity of wagering. So when they have the app open, we're never tracking location. When the app is closed, it's only when the app is open and they are in the process of engaging on the app and perhaps betting.
Right. So please go to
just a couple questions.
Yeah.
So
Wendy has a question.
Thank you. So your data is basically a yes or a no, and if it's a yes, they pass through. You're like a gate. Would that be an accurate analogy?
Correct. We do provide an individual with, or operators would provide an individual through our logic, a indicator why they're being blocked, right? So if it is an instance where someone has they don't have their locations setting on their phone enabled, we would get a notification that, hey, please, put on your location settings so we can get a more accurate location for you, because the data we have is insufficient to allow you to wager. So they would, okay. And then clearly if there's a malicious attempt, we could proactively block a person from being able to access the site entirely, because we believe that it's a malicious attempt, a device that we know based on our billions and billions and billions of data points over the last 10 years knows that device is somehow associated with fraud or fraudulent activity. We would be able to block those as well.
So you do keep a history of the requests or searches?
Yes, of course, we keep a history as required by regulators in various states to have it. Sometimes the data is useful for law enforcement purposes in terms of investigating a potential financial crime or a credit card chargeback or some other instance where a consumer was defrauded or an operator was defrauded, and our data can be helpful in providing a better picture into what the activity actually was.
Okay, that's interesting. And then just one other question. Are there other companies who do what you do?
There are.
Okay. Thanks.
And you have a question? Yes.
Oh, Randy.
Oh, sorry, Randy.
What data do you maintain?
Only the geolocation coordinates.
So when you're looking at something that may potentially relate to fraud, it's solely the coordinate. It's nothing that leads back to the individual or user of the device that is involved.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Yeah, we have no PII, obviously, the location at the time of wager. So it could be they were in their car, it could be they were at their home, it could be at their work, it could be they were at their grocery store or wherever they were. So we would just know the location. We have no individual information based on our data and the data that the operator has, where they do know the player because the player has to be KYC'd and registered their account. Then
right.
They would have that data. Yes.
And the actual location data that you have, how would a third party get access to it? Must it be through a court process or otherwise?
We are licensed and regulated in every jurisdiction in which we operate. So we have a direct relationship with the state regulator and generally with state law enforcement. We would respond to a subpoena if subpoenaed, but in terms of third parties other than for the purposes of an investigation, we would never share data.
Are there any such things as civil subpoenas that have been used, let's say in a legal action of one kind or another, in which your data is being sought?
I'm not familiar with that ever happening.
Okay. In other words, are you able to say it doesn't happen, or you're not sure whether it happens?
I'm certainly not aware of it. It's something I probably would be aware of. I've been working with the company since 2018. And that's just nothing that I've never heard of something like that cross our desk.
Randy, may move to Ann.
Sure.
Ann?
No, I was just wondering, you're a private company. Are you, local regulators license you, but I'm just wondering, is there a body of regulations, federal, who supervises you?
Well, our products are tested by the major testing houses that are also certified, GLI and others. We receive those certifications. Some states have their own testing labs, so our products are certified by the state's testing labs as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Anything else, John? Oh, you wanted to talk about
I did want to share some specific data regarding Vermont. If you don't mind, I'll stop the share on this and open up another screen if you don't.
And just while you're doing that, where are you geolocated right now?
I am geolocated at my home office in Washington, D.C. When I say my home office, I mean my bedroom.
Good. The home office sounds good.
That's fine. Does he have a cat degree?
Yeah, right.
What screen are you seeing right now? Does it say Vermont players seek out legal?
Players seek out legal sports betting.
Great. Make sure I've got
it's the right committee and the right date.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if I've got the right one up here. Excuse me while I stop my share. Okay. Same?
Yeah. Yep.
I apologize. All right, is there another?
Yep.
Next
this
slide.
one
Okay.
has analysis slide,
Yes.
breakdown
Wonderful.
of the state.
Yep. So what we're going to show
Rundown.
here is just some of the activity that we're already seeing in Vermont. Players, sports bettors, and Vermonters are actually familiar with geolocation and GeoComply, because when we see a Vermonter try to access a legal site in another state, we're the ones telling them, hey, you're unable to place a bet while you're located in Vermont, and that you would have to go to a legal jurisdiction. So since the beginning of this year up through April 5th, we saw 120,000 geolocation checks from within the state of Vermont. And these came from over 17,600 unique player accounts that we identified within the state.
Sorry, say that one again. 120,000 geolocation checks from Vermont.
Correct.
For how many?
17,600, over 17,600 unique player accounts.
Unique players. Wow. Jeez, crow. That is an interesting portrait.
So,
And
what the map you see here is kind of a heat map to show where the density of those transactions are taking place throughout the state. Not surprisingly, you'd see more volume near more populous areas of the state.
And do you have any notion, probably you don't, but I don't know, how many of those bets were then moved to the illegal market?
Well, we do know a few things. We do know when we would see a player who's geolocated, and I do have a slide on that. We'll go to that. We'll get to this, but we do know when a player is geolocated in Vermont, and then in a reasonable velocity, a reasonable time frame, they're then geolocated in either Massachusetts or New York or New Hampshire. Then the assumption there is that they got on their phone in Vermont, were unable to place a bet, and crossed the border into one of the legal markets, and were able to place a bet there. So we do see that. We see that 100 times a week at least in Vermont. So we know that there's a lot of activity. What we don't know, and which I think is probably from a public policy standpoint more of a concern, is that are those consumers then turning to the illegal offshore market where there's zero protections for them, obviously zero economic benefit for the state, and there's no accountability. So unfortunately, as I think your previous witness testified, it's impossible to know the activity to a certain degree, but we do know that there are dozens of offshore operators that are actively targeting Vermonters, and literally tell them that, hey, you bet here, it's completely legal, it's completely legitimate, and here are the ways you fund your money, and if you do fund your money, we're going to give you a bonus. They give the appearance just like they would if they were a legitimate operator, and unfortunately for most consumers, they don't know the difference between a legal site or an illegal site.
Thank you.
So what we saw during the NFLC, go ahead, other questions?
No, I just thought Wendy had a question.
Yeah, and you might be ready to answer the, just looking at the dots, and it was probably not representative of the total locations of bets, but I'm just curious. It looked like there were a lot of bets in the tourist areas and ski areas, and I'm just wondering if it's possible to find out just generally the proportion of folks who live in Vermont versus folks who are visiting Vermont who are betting.
Yeah, that wouldn't be possible for us to know their primary residence. However, I would say that if you have individuals who live in New York or all the way down in Washington, D.C., and we have a sports betting app on our phone, and we're visiting Vermont, and it's during the NFL season, the ski season, and we're there and we can't place a bet, that's lost opportunity, because that revenue would be going to Vermont. It wouldn't be going to where that person has their account created. They would have the ability to have a Vermont-based sports betting account and be able to place their wager while they were in Vermont.
Right. So it just helps me to know who they are generally. Right. Okay.
So, John, you have anything else for us? Because we have three more witnesses. And
I apologize. I will just.
No, it's just very interesting.
Interesting data points. Prior to the launch of Massachusetts, we saw the majority of login attempts going into New York regulated sports betting operators. And since the launch of Massachusetts, we see a far, much more evened out, and nearly 40% of all attempts are going into Massachusetts now.
Right.
And then finally, here's some data showing you what we were talking about earlier about where we identify a player near the border in Vermont who logs in, and then 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, we see them in a legal jurisdiction also logging into that same device. And we see hundreds of these activities on a weekly, monthly basis.
So just to go back to Randy, or I guess all of our question, which is, if you don't collect PII, how do you know it's the same player going across this line?
We do know the device. So we device the device. Yeah,
right.
We never know a player. When we talk about individuals, we assume there's somebody holding the device, but it's really the device that we know. We don't know the person that's holding the device.
Okay, so you know the device, but not the person. Know the bye device. Okay, great.
Great.
And